Alright man, so I woke up and wanted to do something a little more freestyle, and I got the perfect comment that I want to address. Now, this is from my last video. You know, we just covered Nero's transition from arcade into FGO mobile. And I had a guy come on here, but it turns out that the guy was so embarrassed that he actually deleted his comment. Usually they get sent to my email anyway, but I didn't get that one. You got lucky this time, Jay. It's not that deep. Anyway, basically what he was saying was Ritsuka is undisputably the best protagonist out of all protagonists in the Type Moon franchise, or at least in Fate, something to that extent. And in my mind, I'm like, why would you say that? Because he didn't say anything to back it up, he just said it. That's not even the problem. I have no problem with him saying that. And I told him I was gonna respond with something serious, and then his second comment let me know not to do so. His second comment was along the lines of, oh well, why would he be better than a lifeless android or an over-the-top emo edgelord and all this other bullshit. You know what they be saying about Shiro and Kiritsugu and whoever. The same redundant arguments, and he probably mentioned some others, but that's what he focused on. Again, if you're new here, I just covered this not too long ago. I did a whole video about it, about how people look at Ritsuka after all this time. Again, I have no problem with Ritsuka, but Ritsuka does have issues. He painted it like there's nothing wrong with Ritsuka at all. And it's laughable, really, because everybody's got problems. But beyond that, what I was going to respond is that one of the many issues that we've already talked about is the time. Nobody has nearly as much time on the board as Ritsuka. You can't even compare them. Ritsuka's character started in 2015. It is 2023. So you understand why this argument is so bad. So now that he's brung this to our attention, Jay, let's do this. And this is what the topic of the video is about. This is where the twist comes from. If all the other timelines were allotted the same amount of time that Ritsuka had, would they be better? Or at least on the same level? That's all it is. And that goes for every timeline. That's Redline, that's Apocrypha, that's Zero, Stay Night, Strange Fate, every single one of them. Requiem. And for the sake of the video, we can throw in all Type Moon. Tsukihime, Kara no Kyokai. I just did that for the title because I know a lot of people aren't on game anyway. Let's do that. Since Ritsuka is so undisputably the best character, and I'm not saying he's not, I'm just saying that's a crazy statement to make without anything to back it up. Let's see if Tsukihime had 8 years, because this is one of the most argued topics in the fandom, and that's the fact that a lot of titles had to take the back seat for FGO to thrive because it was so profitable. So if these titles had the same amount of time as FGO, you don't think they would be better? Or in that realm, if the Extroverse had 8 years, if Strange Fate had been going on for 8 straight years, and for the love of everything, please don't jump out the gate and be like, well, Strange Fate has been going on since 2015. Yeah, it has. On and off, it hasn't been going on for 8 years consistently, where they're getting year-round updates, year-round events, year-round interludes and interactions. So please don't try to make that comparison. You see where I'm going? That's the first thing. It doesn't matter which is better. This isn't a race. But if any other title can match FGO in the same amount of time, that's already a failed argument. That's the whole point. And when I told him that I was gonna respond with something serious, and he was like, well, what was your response? It's like, bro, I'm not responding to you after you called Kiritsugu an edgelord. I can't even take you serious. I've already talked about that. You know what I think about people that say edgelord and emo and all this other nonsense? I feel like they don't have anything to say, so they try to compensate with categories. It's almost like name calling. You know what happens when you name call in an argument? That means that you lost. That means that you're admitting to defeat because you have nothing better to say. That's what that sounds like to me. It's not even worth my attention. And then he turns around and says, well, I thought a fellow FGO lover would say the same thing. You thought a fellow FGO would what? I don't want anybody to take me the wrong way. I love FGO. That's true. I do love FGO. I feel like it, along with any other Type Moon project, has its issues, but for what it brings to the table, I enjoyed the journey. I enjoyed the experience. But just because I enjoy FGO doesn't mean that I agree that this one character is better than everybody else. I don't know how you came to that conclusion. It doesn't even add up. Well, since he's an FGO fan and since I'm an FGO fan, he must think the same thing. No! What are you even talking about? You know, for a long time, people would ask the question, and myself included, why doesn't FGO tackle these things? But FGO deals with its own lane. It might get to those things, but most of the time, it just won't, because that's not its lane. It's a lot of outer worldly interventions, and that position is a lot unlike the original content, which dealt with a lot of things that were on the ground. I'm not going to FGO to learn stuff about the church. You'd probably go Tsukihime. I'm not going to FGO to learn about the association. You want to go El Malloy Case Files. But sometimes it does weave those things in. And I appreciate those moments, because now that it's in the driver's seat, we have no choice but to accept it. We're not getting anything else because they don't make enough money. Okay? And I'm sure your rebuttal is gonna be, well, if they truly were better, then they wouldn't have let FGO take the lead. It did come afterwards. But you know, and I know, the reason for that. Let's not play dumb. It's the waifus. We all know the reason that FGO thrives so easily is because of the waifus. For example, how many waifus are in Kara no Kyokai? How many people do you see talking about Kara no Kyokai? How many waifus are in Mihoyo? How many people do you see talking about Mihoyo? Look at all the characters in FGO and you'll see why FGO is getting talked about more than anything in this franchise. And no, it's not just the story. Hell, most people skip the story. If we want to be honest, people talk up and down about how they love the story so much, and yet they can't wait to learn from YouTube videos. It's like, damn, I thought you liked the story. It's like, yeah, I like the story, but I'm not gonna actually read it. Man, I still got dudes coming to me to this day talking about, I'm still in Fuyuki. Nigga, how? We almost a decade in, you talking about you still in Fuyuki. Man, still ain't leveled his mashup yet. I'm like, what is going on? And then turn around and have the gall to get mad when they don't understand it. Oh, I hate Fate, it's so confusing. Yeah, motherfucker, it's confusing now because you skipped everything. You're trying to learn hundreds of hours worth of content from a 10-minute video talking about you don't understand it. I bet you don't. But that's a whole nother conversation. Then I had another guy come on here. Now I do have this comment. And he says, as a person who hates Extra in general, I don't like how it seems to permeate throughout the other works. It's the Type Moon equivalent of an accidental pregnancy. Now naturally this struck me by surprise. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very strange analogy, but if you don't like Extra, you don't like Extra. It is what it is. I just wanted to know why. So I told him, I said, that's a first. I've never seen anybody really hate on Extra, like talking about. They might disagree with some parts of it at best, but it'd never be the whole thing. So I could only assume that he must have just watched Encore and just pulled from that. He said, no, I don't like the games either. I never liked anything that came out of the Extra timeline. Maybe a few characters, but that's about it for exceptions. Okay, right off the bat, I could be a dickhead and say, you just said you didn't like anything out of it, and then turn around and said that you liked some things out of it. So you're lying, basically. But I'm not even gonna focus on you saying that. You said that, by the way, out your own mouth. My thing is, you don't like anything out of Extra, right? And one of the first things I thought of is the concept of beasts. So I'm assuming that you don't like beasts, because you do know that beasts come from Extra. You can't say Angra because he wasn't born yet. Like, you do know that Kiara's presence got shifted over into FGO, like many of the ideas got shifted into FGO were taken from something else. So when you glorify FGO, just remember that a lot of those things are just reimagined from older works. The Outer Gods, the Aliens, hello, Notes, Archetype Earth, ORT, that's old. All that stuff is old and reimagined. Now, I don't know how he feels about FGO in particular. I'm just assuming that he likes it because he clicked on the video and he wrote on it. Otherwise, why is he here? But let's just say that he does. It's the same issue as the first guy, and that's not knowing the roots. You say you got an issue with this and not paying homage to the roots. So you better not like beasts. You better not like high servants, which also is a concept that came from Extra, where servants have multiple spirits in them. Might as well throw in pseudo servants because that's practically the same thing. Before there was MASH, there was already demi servants in Extra. I hope you don't like anybody that's in the alter ego or moon cancer class because their role in the game is predicated on Extra existing. Oh, but you don't like it. But you like the things that come from it. Which one is it? I just want these dudes to keep it consistent, because you say one thing and then your actions are saying something else. But back to the topic at hand. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and give 5 timelines off the top of my head that I believe would have still flourished if they had that amount of time. We're gonna go Stay Night, Strange Fate, Tsukihime, Case Files, and of course, the Extraverse. I also find it funny that the guy brought up Extraverse being the equivalent to an accidental pregnancy, like people don't want it. People want Extra, like it gets involved too much. I don't like how it permeates through the other works. What other works are you talking about? People want more Extra. Every time Extra gets involved, the interest skyrockets. The elaboration of Safar going against the Olympians in LB5, the introduction of the Seraph chapter did good. The chapter that we just had with Draco did good. Literally brought Grand Order back to #1 on the rankings at the time. That means that it's making it better. And it's genuine interest also. It's not just Type Moon playing on nostalgia, because there's plenty of collabs in the game that get shown and people aren't interested nearly as much. I hope you're not that guy glorifying the recycle spree. And speaking of, that defeats the argument in and of itself. Funny how just bringing in Extra in arcade garners more attention than some original FGO content. Yet you promise it's a bad thing. I guess.